Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and today we're going to talk about something that many of us may have experienced if you have a smartphone, a laptop, a computer of some kind, a device that has interesting information, apps, and the like. One thing that many people find themselves experiencing is picking up their phone or similar device, perhaps with just the intention of checking the time or quickly checking email, and the next thing they know, a half an hour has gone by, and they have no idea where that time went or what happened. Without even noticing that a transition happened, you've been scrolling on some kind of social media, you've been buried deep in emails, you've been buried deep in something else inside your phone, and somewhere in the back of your mind as you're scrolling, there may even be a little voice saying, okay, we've got to stop this really soon, but it doesn't happen. And the interesting thing about this is that the conversation tends to be focused around willpower, and it's a little bit more complicated than just that. Your brain is neuroscientifically being hacked, and while there are some things that we can do, which we will talk about, it is a little bit more difficult than simply saying, I'm not going to do that. It's almost like having a mini casino in your pocket, something that is highly addictive, and there are neuroscientific reasons why that is the case. So one thing that many of these addictive platforms are very aware of is the brain's reward system and how we are very much drawn to something understood to be variable reward schedules, meaning that similar to a slot machine, you don't win every time, but you win frequently enough to keep you invested. When you pull up your news feed or you check your notifications, you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes it's something very boring. Sometimes it might even be something unpleasant, perhaps an unhelpful comment or something like that. But other times you might be receiving a really nice comment, someone complimenting you, someone connecting with you, and that is a very rewarding feeling. There's also the reward of finding something particularly interesting or something new, and our brain loves new, novel stimulation. So when we are temporarily rewarded with something exciting, a like on a post, a funny message or video, a message from a friend, a nice comment, that unpredictability of what we're going to get on the other side of checking those notifications is by design and very effective for keeping us hooked. The same is true when it comes to scrolling. Sometimes you're scrolling and you don't see very much of interest at all. It's a bunch of ads or a bunch of content that you already know about or don't care about. But of course, the algorithm gets better and better at guessing what it is you will find interesting to keep you drawn to that space. And our dopamine system has more to do with the anticipation of a reward versus receiving the actual reward itself. So to some extent, when we reach for that phone, it's not even necessarily about getting the good thing. It's that hit of anticipation where we get a little bit of a dopamine reward from the maybe this time it'll be something really cool feeling. And that same neurological pattern can keep some people pulling slot machines for hours. The thing that you are gambling with, though, is not money necessarily. It is your time. The nucleus accumbens, the reward center of your brain, lights up with each scroll or each notification check and creates a dopamine loop, which is very intentionally designed by the people whose job it is to keep you hooked. So that's where the conversation around willpower gets very tricky. When we think about things like self-control and willpower, we are typically referring to the area of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for planning and decision-making and overriding our more base impulses, kind of like the brain's CEO, making some executive decisions about how you use your time and what is actually good for you long-term. But we also have our limbic system that is related to the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens and operates on a little bit more of a primitive level. It's a little bit more tied to immediate gratification, craving those dopamine hits. And just when your prefrontal cortex is trying to take over with your willpower to say, all right, no more, we're going to stop at 8:05, the limbic system is still there in the background saying, but what if we miss something? If we hang up now, if we put it away now, we might miss something really good or really important. Now, sometimes the prefrontal cortex wins the battle, but the problem is that our ability to maintain self-control and that sense of willpower is a finite resource. We do not have unlimited executive function, and when you have exerted a certain amount of self-control, perhaps early in the day, maybe resisting a donut or something like that, staying focused to get some work done, or being patient with other people, later on, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex has less activity doing some of those self-control types of tasks. It gets tired. And in the meantime, your limbic system always wants that ongoing reward. This becomes even more pronounced when we are under stress, when we are emotionally upset or depleted. The stress hormones like cortisol and norepinephrine that are kind of flooding everything can weaken that connection even further between the prefrontal cortex and our ability to maintain that self-control or willpower. And that actually can strengthen the dominance of some of those more primitive areas that are shouting for you to keep scrolling. So if you notice yourself picking up your phone, turning to it for comfort when you are particularly stressed, you're not crazy and it's not unusual at all. It's not a weakness. That was your prefrontal cortex literally going offline, stepping out, taking a break, and the stress response has been handed over to those parts of your brains that just want to do some stress eating or stress shopping or stress scrolling and continue to follow that same pattern. Now there's another piece here, the anterior cingulate cortex, that recognizes when something in your immediate actions or desires are in conflict with your bigger picture, longer term goals. So you're working on an important project and suddenly you get an urge to pick up that phone to check something. Perhaps you have not disabled notifications and you notice something new coming through. You may detect that there's a conflict between the desire that you have to finish that project, to complete that goal, and the new imposing desire to pick up the phone and look at it. And who wins out in that conflict is determined by the prefrontal cortex, whether it is in a place of strength or if it's depleted because you're stressed out. So that's where the guilty feeling comes in, that conflict between the bigger picture goal or desire to get the project finished, to stay on task, to remain focused and motivated, and that imposing desire kind of nudging you to just take a quick look. It'll just be for 1 minute. And as a result, when we give in to that nudge to go and peek and find ourselves scrolling or shopping or whatever it is that we're doing instead of the thing we meant to do, we end up feeling guilty, and there's an unpleasant feeling because there's a part of us that senses that we are conflicting with our bigger picture goals. So this kind of all explains why simply having willpower is more complicated than it may look on the surface. So the reassuring part of it is that rather than tripwiring your guilt and feeling bad about being unable to exercise enough willpower, understanding everything that's actually happening here can be very useful and can allow you to create a more informed strategy, understanding that simply choosing to put it down is not always the easiest path forward. Actually, predetermining some things ahead of having this come up during your day and creating strategies that are pre-decided is a lot easier than trying to simply exercise willpower in the moment. Because there are days where we're more stressed or more tired and we simply don't have the capacity in the prefrontal cortex to consistently override those desires and those nudges. So instead we can create a system where you decide what tends to work for you. So there's no cookie cutter solution. It could be a little bit of trial and error. But here are some things that work for some people, not necessarily all people, that you can trial out for yourself just to see if some of these help you. So creating friction is one of them, and that can look a lot of different ways. For some people, creating a barrier, perhaps turning off your phone completely when you're ready to work, knowing that it takes a little time to start it back up again, is a form of a barrier. You can also create a system where you leave your phone in another room or another place temporarily while you're working or doing the thing that you're trying to focus on. Then that requires you to get up and go somewhere else to actually go and look at it. Some people also like to adjust the colors on the screen, turning it to grayscale, removing the colorful, vibrant interface, which reinforces the reward system because it's fun, it's pretty, it's nice to look at. So if you make it less appealing to look at, that can be helpful for some people. It's also helpful to understand that your prefrontal cortex has more resources available earlier in the day, meaning that your self-control may be better earlier in the day when you're fresher. So designing your day in a way where the more difficult or more focus required tasks are done early, so that later in the day, if you do slip up a little bit and end up getting distracted, it will have less of an impact on your overall goals. Some people also find it helpful to schedule specific times of day when they will allow themselves to check social media, to look at notifications, text messages, or emails, doing it 2 times a day, 3 times a day, depending, of course, on the types of things that you have that you need to look at. And there are enough settings now available to most people where you can decide that perhaps only 1 or 2 very important family members are able to break through if you have do not disturb settings and similar. That way, you know that the people who really need to reach you if there's something urgent will be able to get to you, and you don't need to keep checking to see if you have a text or an email. You can also set a timer, sometimes having a visible or audible reminder that you only wanted to do this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes can help to nudge you back out of the little bit of dreamy space that we slip into when we're scrolling or looking at things. And also just being honest with yourself and creating awareness. Noticing, this is interesting. I've been scrolling for longer than I expected to, and starting to pay attention to the things that you tend to habitually do so that you can better strategize your way around them by building awareness and increasing your understanding of your own patterns. Postponing the desire to do anything is also very impactful. Simply holding off for like 2 minutes can sometimes shift the brain's compulsion to pick up that phone and look at it. So looking at the clock and just saying, I'll check it in 2 minutes instead of right now, sometimes the urge will pass. And if it doesn't pass and you decide to do it, at least you're doing it now with a little bit more intention and a little bit more involvement of that prefrontal cortex. It's also extremely helpful to have other tools in place for managing a stressful day so that it is not as tempting to just pick up the phone and start scrolling or looking for comfort in all the wrong places. And this is where really having a system of tools is very valuable. Having some other options that you can turn to when something doesn't go your way, you've had an unpleasant exchange with someone and you're feeling a little bit bothered by it, your project isn't working out quite the way you had hoped, you've hit a stuck point, and there's a natural desire to pause and take a break. Taking a break is a great idea, but what you do on that break really matters. And if you decide in advance that you're going to use one of your other tools, you'll be less likely to just get swallowed into your phone or device. Many of my clients have found that using tools like hypnosis audios, yoga nidra, EFT tapping, and of course there are many, many others, but these are some that I'm familiar with, can be very useful. Particularly if you have a short amount of time, something like EFT tapping is very, very useful because you can do it in just a couple of minutes and significantly calm down your nervous system. And then, of course, when you're taking a little bit longer break, 10 or 15 minutes, and you use a guided audio like hypnosis or yoga nidra, you can also significantly calm down your nervous system, reframe things in a different way, allow your brain a break, a little bit of mental rest, and the opportunity to reset. So of course, if you're interested in tools like that, I offer them as part of my monthly membership, the Hypno-Pothecary, also nicknamed the Poth, and all of that information is available for you in the show notes. So definitely go and check that out if you would like to have some more tools available to you. And I hope that you found this to be helpful and interesting. And until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.